Okay, so C2. Our second point in our prompt was that they had little food
to eat.
So where in the text is our evidence?
Dig deeper.
Daily atrocities of the ghetto. I love that word. He took pictures of the starving people spooning soup into their mouths.
So that's the only place, unless we have them think about.
They generally had more to eat, yeah.
Those Jews were considered privileged because they had more to eat.
They showed well-fed family.
Ross was a Jew who was among the privileged because...
Does it say anywhere else that it talked about? Starved? I thought I heard somewhere.
Just the soup kitchen.
Oh.
The starving people spooning soup into their mouths.
Okay.
And then it had a picture.
Well,
yeah.
But our explanation could go deeper about how that was not healthy or uncomfortable or whatever.
Yeah.
Because remember, these are just evidence to point to the big idea that life was hard. The big idea is not that they're starving. The big idea is that life was hard.
Right, and that they had little food to eat.
Yeah.
There's starving people spooning soup into their mouths. If he felt the need to take pictures of that, and soup is not the most healthy, we have to use our schema. We have to think about that kind of soup.
Well, and we know that soup kitchens are for people who, and it talked about, the author gave us
a picture of a soup kitchen, which we know.
I know in my schema, like when I was in high school, I went to like Open Door Mission, which is like a soup kitchen, and I know that the people who go there usually aren't living comfortable lives.
Right.
So
it's
we could
difficult.
talk about that in our explanation. So what data could I quote? The author continues
in paragraph 12.
Jews, quote, were starving, in paragraph 12, the author continues that Ross took photo evidence.
Yep, took pictures of the starving people, and that would be, so actually, starting with the word took, that would be the start of your quote.
Okay, that Ross, quote, took pictures
of the starving people spooning soup into their mouths.
Starving people spooning the soup?
Nope, just spooning soup.
Soup into their mouths.
Okay.
This is a good one to use our background knowledge on.
Into their mouths. The author also included a picture. Because a picture can definitely be text evidence.
Text feature,
yep.
The author also
includes a picture or provides a picture for the reader.
Provides
a picture of the soup kitchen for the reader.
Soup kitchen.
In the Lodz ghetto, if you really want to. That's what it says. A soup kitchen in the Lodz ghetto, or a soup kitchen.
In the ghetto.
Yeah.
Or should I say Lodz?
I would, because we're talking about Lodz.
Oh, how do I spell it?
L-O-D-Z.
And that means that we're actually accurately reading the nonfiction text feature. In the Lodz ghetto. Provides a picture of the soup kitchen in the Lodz ghetto. You said something else.
To help, well, don't write this down. To help reinforce, to help the reader picture, to help the reader.
To give additional information. The author also provides a picture of the soup kitchen in the Lodz ghetto to help us understand, to help the reader for more information, for more evidence.
To help the reader, I want to say something like to help the reader envision how crowded the soup. To visualize the soup kitchen, or to visualize.
To help the reader visualize. To help how it was like.
There we go. Visualize.
Help the reader visualize. We probably should have said understand, but visualize what it was like.
There we go.
What it was like. Okay.
Okay.
Good?
Yep. And the explanation may not need to be enormous for this one, especially because we do have a text feature.
Yeah, I think though that this would be a great one to model, like
The schema.
yeah, and like I mean obviously starving has to deal with being uncomfortable. But going back to our point, the main idea that life was difficult, so we could say this evidence or that people who visit soup kitchens or who
eat at soup kitchens, who use soup kitchens for meals, who
use soup kitchens don't have the resources. Is that too high a language?
well, don't have the means, don't have the funds, don't have
the money?
The money. I
Can
know
you
that
just
people
say-
who use soup kitchens often don't have the money.
Let's say money or resources.
Yeah, there we go. Because these guys,
Kitchens often, so I know that people who use soup kitchens often don't
often don't have
often don't have the money or resources to provide for themselves and their families,
that works.
or to provide a lot. Okay.
To feed themselves.
Feed themselves and their families, or feed themselves.
There we go.
Themselves. I know that people who use soup kitchens often don't have the money or resources to feed themselves. Therefore, or furthermore, we have to connect this to what they were saying.
Right.
I know that people who use soup kitchens.
The Polish ghetto during the Holocaust was difficult. So life
is hard when your basic needs are not met, just like the Jews' needs weren't met. I like the just as the Jews.
Yeah.
So
I don't think it's juices though.
Juices.
Juices.
I know that people who use soup kitchens often don't have the money or resources to feed themselves. Life is difficult when you are hungry. Therefore, the Jews or
Life in the ghetto was difficult for the Jews.
life
Because there's an inference right there. It must have been hard for them.
have been hard
For the Jews.
What was our third point that we're going to make?
Many people died.
When we started in paragraph 8, the second one we said the author continues. I know that good word choice means that we don't repeat what we're going to say every time, so we want to say a different thing.
Lastly, because
Ooh.
actually this is still paragraph 12, so.
Yeah. So lastly,
Yep.
I'll try to write small.
No, you're good. We don't have very.
Okay. Lastly, the
Okay.
text.
Let me read you what the text says before you write. He photographed others being loaded into the cattle cars for the trip to death camps where millions of Jews were murdered. Many of these photos have never been seen by the public until now. Ross buried them during the war and retrieved them years later. So we don't need that part.
Lastly,
Ross photographed, don't write yet. Ross photographed others being loaded into cattle cars for the trip to the death camps where millions of Jews were murdered.
yes, that's what I want to say.
And I'm thinking schema on this. Can you imagine not knowing if you were going to die or not that day?
That phrase right there. Can we ask the question? Can we ask that question in our text?
Yes.
Can you imagine? I love that.
Totally.
Okay.
That can be part of that background. So lastly,
Quote?
it says he photographed others. So he
Ross.
and then in parentheses, or lastly, Ross, and then start
Yes,
your quotes.
yes,
Either
Ross.
way.
I'm going to capitalize Ross because that's a name.
Okay.
That's it for that evidence, right?
That's
I
it
can
for that
give an
evidence.
explanation. I really liked how you asked the question. I would have never thought to do that.
Well, just for me, that totally, like, wow. Even if my life wasn't difficult enough, even if I didn't have enough food, or I was living in a one-room area with my entire family,
Squish.
with 200,000 other people, the fact that I could die any day just because they decided I needed to die,
You know
That
what
would make my life miserable.
You know what I wouldn't also like is watching other Jews being privileged just because they chose for them to be privileged. Like, what makes them better, you know?
Or watching my friend who I played with down the street get loaded onto a cattle car knowing I'd never see my friend again.
Watching your family and friends, you yourself not going, but even watching
Yeah.
your family and friends.
People that
watching
you
your loved
knew.
ones.
Yes.
Oh, this, okay.
All of this makes life difficult for them. It had to have.
Yeah. So, can you imagine?
I would.
Can you imagine? And that, even though we don't say, I think, I know, I infer, we're still doing that thinking in here. So can you imagine?
Well, yeah, I am inferring that this would be hard on them only
Right.
because my background knowledge says this would be miserable.
I would hate this, yeah.
Yep.
Can you imagine, do you want to say that we're being loaded or that we watch our friends and family be loaded?
Can you imagine
Actually, let's do
watching?
we, and then we could say, or even watching your friends and family.
Yep. Can you imagine
Being-
not know? Well, what? Can you imagine not knowing whether you were going to live or die?
Being treated like a cow.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot about
So what
this.
should we say?
If it was your turn to die?
It's your turn to die?
Question mark.
Interrobang? Question mark.
Or what do you think? Or even watching your don't write it. Or even watching your friends and
ones?
your loved ones get loaded onto the cattle cars knowing they were going to die?
Not knowing if that was the last time you would see them.
Yeah, because that's what happened to a lot of these poor
Can you
people.
imagine not knowing if it was your turn to die? Or even watching your loved ones being loaded into a cattle car, not knowing if that was the last time you would see them.
Perfect.
This was extremely
This
this made life horrific. This made life
extremely difficult. Tie it back to our difficult because that's our
this
prompt.
made life extreme ELI difficult for anyone living in the ghetto.
Yep.
Because going back to the Polish ghetto.
Yep.
For anyone living in the ghetto. Okay. So I know that the R means to restate the prompt and the A is like our answer, and our answer is just our points that we're going to make.
Right. Because there is no question on this one. They are giving us
The main idea.
the main idea.
We're proving it.
It's not asking us what our opinion is.
So
the prompt, the main idea of the article, Life Under the Nazis, is that life in a Polish ghetto was difficult during the Holocaust. Explain how the author supports the main idea throughout the passage.
So we can just start with the life in the Polish ghetto was difficult. Or we could say the main idea of the article is that life in the Polish ghetto was difficult during the Holocaust.
Yep, I say we restate that entire first sentence.
Okay, so the main idea of the article.
Okay. The author, hold on. The author explained that the ghettos were overcrowded, there was little food to eat, and many people died. Is that going to be what our answer is?
Well, let's go back to our site. So we said that our first piece of evidence was that it was crowded. Our second piece of evidence was that they were hungry because they went to a soup kitchen. And our third piece of evidence was that they were loaded and they were going to die because they were murdered. So what were our 3 points?
Overcrowded, little food to eat, and many people died.
Yeah, and with the A, we just restate our 3 points that we're going to say.
Yeah, I would agree.
So how should I start that sentence? The article proves this by explaining that the ghettos were overcrowded, the Jews were starving, and many people died, period.
Okay, so the R for restate at the end.
Yep, because we're like, this is kind of like our conclusion. So we restate the prompt, but after we've said everything. So
Yeah.
I kind of like the fact that, I like that.
All in all, the author explained
The
That the-
difficulties.
the difficulties of living in an overcrowded.
The all in all, the author shows, or whatever, the many difficulties of living in a Polish ghetto.
Including. Including. Okay, all in all,
the author proves
life in the Polish ghetto
had many.
Was difficult. Life in the Polish ghetto was difficult.
Ghetto or ghettos?
Single.
Okay.
Polish ghetto was difficult.
For many reasons.
These reasons include
overcrowding, starvation, and